Every choice you make builds your life, even the small ones. Most people don't struggle because they lack talent or time. They struggle because they keep making fast, unclear decisions that don't match what they truly want. And deep down, they know it. They say yes when they should say no. They follow pressure instead of their own thinking. They regret it later and call it a lesson, but it keeps happening. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern. This video is not here to motivate you with empty words. It's here to help you fix that pattern and take control of your choices, real decisions, clear reasons, strong action. If you've ever made a decision and felt it was wrong right after, this is your wake-up call. From today, you'll learn how to make smart decisions every time, without fear, without guessing, and without regret. Stay with this. It might change how you live your next 10 years. Chapter 1. Slow down when your mind feels pushed or confused. You know, one of the smartest things a person can do is simply learn to pause. I mean, really, pause. Not to avoid action, not to waste time, not to run away, but to gather themselves, to get clear, to calm the mental storm. Because most people don't fail because they don't try hard enough. They fail because they keep making rushed, unclear decisions in moments when their mind is not ready to choose anything at all. That's a real problem. And if you're serious about improving your life, you've got to start here by learning to slow down when your mind feels pushed or confused. Now, most people are in a hurry. They wake up already behind. They open their eyes and the pressure starts work. Family, bills, responsibilities, expectations, it all comes crashing in. And instead of managing it, instead of taking a moment to check in with themselves, they dive right in and try to solve everything at once. That's how confusion grows. That's how mistakes happen. That's how they say yes to things they don't believe in and no to things they actually need. When your mind is pushed, when you feel that pressure in your chest, when your thoughts are scattered, when your energy is off balance, you're not in a good place to make any decision. And that's the truth. Trying to decide under that state is like trying to drive through a thunderstorm at full speed with your headlights off. You're guessing, you're hoping, you're reacting, and in most cases, you're going to crash into something. People often think slowing down is weakness. It's not. It's wisdom. It means you care enough about the outcome that you don't rush into it just because the moment feels heavy. Slowing down gives your mind a chance to breathe. It gives your values a chance to speak, and it gives your future self a better chance to be proud of the choices you made today. Let's talk about the psychology behind it. When you feel rushed, your nervous system is activated. Your brain is wired for survival. It doesn't care about what's best, it cares about what's fast. That's where impulsive decisions come from. That's where you say things you regret, spend money you didn't plan to, agree to things that drain you, or walk away from something you actually needed. That's not thinking, that's reacting. And if you build your life on reactions, you'll be stuck fixing problems you could have avoided with just a little pause. Now, imagine this. You're feeling pressure. You're overwhelmed. You're about to make a big decision. It could be about work. It could be about someone you care about. It could be about your money, your health, your future. And you feel that tightness in your chest. You feel your mind trying to grab 5 different thoughts at once. That's your signal, right there. That feeling is not something to ignore. It's something to notice. Because your emotions are not the problem, they're a message. They're saying, wait, step back, something's off. And that's what smart people do. They pay attention to that signal. They don't shove it away. They don't distract themselves. They don't look for someone else to fix it. They stop. They slow down. They go for a walk. They turn off the noise. They breathe. They ask themselves real questions like, why am I feeling this way? What am I really afraid of? What outcome am I actually hoping for? They get back to the truth. That's where clarity starts, not in more information, not in more talking, but in quiet, in honesty, in stillness. You see, life is full of options, and the more choices we have, the more confused we can become unless we've built the habit of slowing down and checking in with what really matters. A decision made in confusion is almost always a decision you'll have to fix later, and fixing a poor decision often takes more energy than just waiting until you were ready to make it right the first time. You have to understand that slowing down is not about doing nothing. It's about doing the right thing at the right time. It's about acting from power, not panic. It's about choosing from a place of stability, not survival. That's how people rise. Not by being fast, but by being steady, disciplined, clear, certain. And don't get me wrong, it's not always easy. Slowing down requires self-control. It requires courage, because when you pause, you're left with your thoughts. And sometimes what comes up isn't pretty. You might realize you've been running from something. You might face fear. You might have to admit something to yourself that's uncomfortable. But that's how real growth happens. That's where change begins. When you're willing to face the noise inside you, instead of being pulled by everything outside you. We live in a noisy world. Everyone's shouting, everyone's trying to be first, everyone's trying to prove something, and it's easy to get caught in that energy. But I'm telling you this, the strongest people I've ever known are the ones who know how to sit quietly, feel everything, and still make the right choice. They don't fold under pressure. They don't chase validation. They don't let confusion run their life. They take ownership. They pause. They get clear. Then they act. Now here's something you can do right now. Build a rule for yourself. Never make an important decision when your mind feels messy. If you're tired, wait. If you're emotional, wait. If you're angry, wait. If you're unsure, wait. Not forever, not out of fear, but long enough to return to a calm state, long enough to remember what matters, long enough to see things clearly. Train yourself to take 10 quiet minutes before big choices. No phone, no music, no distraction. Just sit, breathe, feel, listen. Ask yourself, what am I trying to avoid? What outcome will give me peace? Is this decision aligned with the kind of person I want to be? These are not just questions, they're tools. Use them. Let them guide you. Some of the worst mistakes in life are made in seconds, and some of the best decisions are made after hours of reflection. Give yourself the space to choose with strength, not stress. You're not in a race. You don't need to have all the answers right now. You just need to care enough to pause, to feel, to think, and to decide from a place of truth. You deserve a life built on decisions that serve you, not ones that drain you, not ones that pull you away from your path. And that starts with this simple yet powerful practice. Slow down when your mind feels pushed or confused, because your clarity is power, your stillness is power, and your ability to pause, reflect, and respond with wisdom, that's what will separate you from the rest. That's how smart decisions are made, every time. One pause, one breath, one honest moment at a time. Chapter 2. Look deeper than what feels good right now. Most people make choices based on what feels good in the moment, and that's the beginning of a long chain of regrets, because what feels good right now is often not what's best for your future. It's just what gives you relief. It's what's easy. It's what takes away discomfort for a little while. But growth isn't built on temporary relief. Smart decisions come from being willing to look deeper, past the surface, past the quick fix, past the part that just feels good right now. This is where discipline meets awareness. It's when you stop asking, what feels nice today? And you start asking, what leads me to the life I want? You've got to break the pattern of chasing comfort and start searching for truth. That means you don't grab the first option just because it's available. You don't follow emotions just because they're loud. You don't pick the easier road just because the harder one takes more out of you. See, every time you're faced with a decision, your emotions will try to vote first. They'll push you toward the things that give fast satisfaction. They'll say, just do this. It'll make you feel better right now. And that sounds tempting, but if you keep giving in to that, your life will always be one step behind where you want it to be. You'll keep starting over. You'll keep wondering why things don't change. And you'll keep finding yourself in the same places, with the same problems, asking the same questions. Looking deeper means you stop and ask, what's really behind this choice? Not just, do I want it? But, why do I want it? Not just, will this make me feel better now? But will this actually move me forward? That's how people grow. That's how people change. They stop running toward relief and they start moving toward responsibility. You've got to understand something about the mind. It loves ease. It wants the path that requires the least amount of discomfort. So when you're tired, when you're frustrated, when you're uncertain, your mind will try to convince you to settle for what feels good in the moment. But real progress is not about what feels good. It's about what works. And most of what works doesn't always feel good at first. It feels uncomfortable. It stretches you. It demands more from you. But that's exactly why it builds you. Think about the times in your life when you made a quick decision because it felt good right then. Maybe you skipped the workout. Maybe you spent the money you were supposed to save. Maybe you stayed in the wrong place with the wrong people because walking away felt too hard, and at the time it felt fine. But later you felt it, the cost, the delay, the missed opportunity. That's the price of chasing what feels good without thinking it through. Now think about the times when you paused, when you said no to something easy because you were focused on something greater. It wasn't fun in the moment. It wasn't exciting, but it brought you peace. It built your strength. It gave you momentum. That's the power of looking deeper. You're not reacting, you're choosing. You're not escaping, you're building. Every choice has a layer underneath it, and most people never stop to dig into that layer. They stay at the top. They stay where it's light, easy, and quick. But the real answers are underneath. The real reason you want to make that call, the real reason you feel stuck, the real reason you're drawn to a decision that looks good but doesn't feel right. If you don't learn how to look deeper, you'll keep getting fooled by appearances. And here's something else. Sometimes what feels good is just a distraction. It's not even what you really want, it's just what helps you avoid what you don't want to face. That's a dangerous habit. Because the more you avoid facing the real problem, the more the problem grows. You've got to build the habit of facing your thoughts, even the uncomfortable ones, especially the uncomfortable ones, because they hold the truth. And truth is what you need to make smart choices. People who grow fast are not the ones who make perfect decisions. They're the ones who are honest about their decisions. They ask real questions. They admit when they're avoiding something. They pay attention to what's driving them. They don't lie to themselves to feel better. They don't cover weakness with distractions. They go straight to the core. That's what gives them strength. That's what gives them clarity. You've got to stop and ask yourself, what is this decision hiding? Am I making this choice because it's right or just because it's comfortable? If I remove my emotions from this, does it still make sense? These questions are not easy, but they are necessary, because every smart decision starts with seeing clearly, and you can't see clearly if you're only focused on what feels good. This doesn't mean you should never enjoy life. It doesn't mean you avoid joy or happiness. It means you don't let those things control your choices. You enjoy them when they align with your values, when they support your growth, when they help your future, not just your present. That's the balance. You don't have to live in pain to grow, but you do have to learn the difference between real joy and quick comfort. Most of the time, we already know what the right decision is. We just don't like how it feels. So we try to justify the easier option. We tell ourselves stories. We convince ourselves that shortcuts are okay, that we'll do the right thing next time, that we're just tired today. But every time we do that, we lower our standard a little more. We make it easier to settle. And before long, we're living far below our potential, not because we didn't have the ability, but because we didn't have the courage to look deeper. You've got to break that cycle. You've got to remind yourself that your life is built on the sum of your choices. And if you keep choosing based on what feels good right now, you'll end up with a life that looks good on the outside but feels empty on the inside. You'll have moments of relief but no deep sense of progress. And that's not what you're here for. You're here to grow, to get stronger, to build something that lasts. That takes honesty, that takes patience, that takes depth. Every smart decision requires a moment of truth, and in that moment, you've got to be willing to look past your emotions, past your fears, past the pressure. You've got to ask, what matters most to me right now? What kind of person do I want to be in this moment? Is this choice helping me become that person or pulling me further away? That's how you get clarity. That's how you rise above distractions. Don't live your life chasing feelings. Live your life chasing growth. Chase the things that will matter to you 1 year from now, 5 years from now. Choose what gives you peace, not just pleasure. Choose what gives you strength, not just satisfaction. Choose what builds your future, not what makes your today more convenient. There will always be something that feels good right now. That's not going to change. What matters is whether you have the discipline to pause and ask if it's what you really want. Whether you can stop and remember who you are and what you're working for. That's what separates strong minds from weak ones. Not talent, not luck. Just the willingness to look deeper, to choose with clarity, to think for yourself. So next time you're faced with a decision and something feels exciting or comforting or easy, don't say yes right away. Don't follow that feeling blindly. Take a breath. Take a step back. Ask yourself the deeper questions. Think about your future self. Think about what you're building. That one pause might save you months of regret. That one pause might change the direction of your life. Smart decisions are not built on what feels good now. They're built on what feels right when you're fully honest with yourself. Learn to look deeper. That's how you protect your time. That's how you protect your future. That's how you build a life you're proud of. One decision at a time. One honest moment at a time. One deeper look at a time.
Chapter 3. Ask yourself what you might regret tomorrow morning. Before you make any decision, you need to stop and ask a very real question. Will I regret this tomorrow morning? That one question can change everything. It forces you to leave the moment and step into your future, even just a few hours ahead. Because tonight you might feel fine. You might feel satisfied. You might think the choice was no big deal. But when you wake up, when the noise is gone, when the emotion has faded and your mind is calm, that's when the truth shows up. That's when you realize what you actually did, not what you told yourself to feel okay about. This isn't about overthinking. It's about taking full responsibility for what you're about to do. Most people don't stop long enough to ask themselves how they'll feel later. They're focused on right now, what they want, what they don't want to deal with, what will shut the pressure off for a little while, and that's where regret is born. In those moments when people act just to escape a feeling, instead of thinking through the consequences, that's when shortcuts happen. That's when people say yes too fast, say no without thinking, quit too soon, hold on too long, spend what they shouldn't, speak what they don't mean, or stay silent when they should have stood up. Regret is a powerful teacher, but it's also painful, and if you're not careful, it becomes a pattern, one that repeats every time you ignore that small voice inside you that says, "This isn't right." You've felt it before. That hesitation, that gut feeling, that moment of pause before you made a choice, but instead of listening to it, you moved anyway. You talked yourself out of it. You told yourself you'd figure it out later, and later showed up with consequences. You need to understand something simple but serious. One small decision can cost you time, peace, or even opportunities you may never get back. Not every choice gives you a second chance. That's why asking this question is so important. Will I regret this tomorrow? Isn't just a sentence. It's a pause button. It's a check-in with your values. It's a way to protect yourself from doing something you know you'll have to apologize for, clean up, or carry for far too long. It's easy to pretend that the future doesn't matter when you're tired, angry, or emotional, but it does. It always does. And your future self tomorrow morning is counting on you to think straight today. That version of you is going to live with whatever you decide right now. They'll be the one who feels the weight, who deals with the fallout, who looks in the mirror and asks, "Why did I do that?" So think about that version of you before you act. Not a year from now, just tomorrow morning, when the rush is gone, when the pressure is quiet, when it's just you and the truth. Most regrets don't come from not knowing. They come from knowing better and doing it anyway. That's the hard part. It's not ignorance, it's avoidance. You knew you shouldn't have said it. You knew you shouldn't have done it. But you told yourself you'd be fine. You convinced yourself it wouldn't matter. That's why regret stings. It reminds you that you could have done better. And that's what this practice is all about. Doing better before you have to learn the hard way. Start applying this right now. Every time you're about to decide something, pause and ask, "If I do this, will I feel proud when I wake up?" You don't need a long list of pros and cons. You don't need 10 people's advice. Just a simple, honest answer. And you'll know, you always know. Maybe not with logic, but with your gut, with your heart, with that part of you that doesn't lie. That's the part you need to listen to. Because here's the truth. You never regret being honest with yourself. You never regret thinking twice. You never regret holding back when your first reaction was impulsive. What you do regret is moving too fast, ignoring what you felt, choosing what was easy instead of what was right. You regret breaking your own rules. You regret chasing something temporary when you had something meaningful. And if you keep doing that, your confidence breaks down. You stop trusting yourself. You stop believing you can change. That's how people get stuck. Not because they lack ability, but because they stop believing their own judgment. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have it all figured out. But you do need to be honest. You need to care about the kind of person you're becoming. Because every decision shapes you. It either takes you closer to your potential or further from it. And if you keep choosing based on how you feel now, instead of how you want to feel tomorrow, you'll keep ending up in the same cycle. Feel good now, feel bad later. Promise to change. Repeat. That cycle ends when you start asking better questions. Questions that put the future in focus. Questions that challenge your automatic reactions. Questions that remind you of who you are and what you stand for. You're not weak for having urges. You're not broken for wanting comfort. You're human. But the difference between those who grow and those who don't is this. They pause. They think. They don't follow every emotion that shows up. They take responsibility before the damage is done. And that's a powerful thing. It means you don't have to live in regret anymore. You don't have to keep saying, "I wish I had thought about it first." You can think now. You can stop now. You can choose better now. And it doesn't take long. This isn't some complicated life strategy. It's one simple habit. A question, asked at the right time, with the right intention. Will I regret this tomorrow morning? That's your filter. That's your standard. That's your moment of truth. Use it and mean it. Don't brush it off. Don't rush past it. Don't silence it because it's inconvenient. If the answer makes you uncomfortable, that's a sign. Listen to it. Here's the other side of it. Sometimes the decision that's harder in the moment is the one you'll be most proud of later. Walking away when staying would be easier. Speaking up when silence feels safer. Taking responsibility when blaming someone else would let you off the hook. Those are the decisions that build character. They might not feel good at night, but they bring peace in the morning, and peace matters. Living with peace is better than living with a bunch of excuses for why you keep repeating the same mistakes. You deserve to feel proud of your choices. Not every day will be perfect, but every day can be honest. And honesty is where confidence grows. It's where real self-respect comes from. Not from pretending you're always right, but from knowing you're doing your best to live with wisdom. The next time you're about to act, when you're feeling rushed, when your emotions are loud, when the easy option is calling your name, pause. Not for long, just long enough to ask yourself, will I regret this when the sun comes up? You might still feel tempted, but you'll also feel something else. Clarity, strength, responsibility. That's what separates people who lead their lives from people who are led by their emotions. Regret is not something you can always avoid, but you can reduce it. You can learn from it. And most importantly, you can use it as a reminder to stop and think next time. You're not here to live with regret every day. You're here to grow. You're here to choose with intention. You're here to build a life that makes sense to you, not just in the moment, but in the quiet morning hours when it's just you and your truth. That's the test. Not how you feel right after, but how you feel the day after. That's the proof. That's the feedback. And if you keep asking yourself that question over and over, day after day, decision after decision, you'll start to notice something. Your choices get sharper, your peace gets stronger, your regrets get fewer, because you're no longer reacting. You're no longer running. You're leading. That's the power of asking the right question at the right time. And this question, what will I regret tomorrow morning, is one of the most powerful you'll ever learn to ask. Use it. Protect your future, respect your progress, and trust yourself to do what's right, even when it's not easy, especially when it's not easy, because that's where real growth begins.
Chapter 4. Choose based on truth, not pressure. Quick wins. Most people make choices because something outside of them is shouting louder than what's going on inside. Pressure is loud. Deadlines, opinions, competition, fear, expectations, they all push you. They tell you to hurry up, to not miss out, to do what others are doing, to get it done now, even if you're not ready. And then there's the lure of the quick win. The shortcut, the fast result. The thing that gives you the feeling of success without the real effort it takes to build something solid. But the truth is, if you keep making decisions under pressure or chasing quick wins, you'll keep building a life that looks busy but feels empty. You've got to decide what you want to stand on. Is it truth or is it noise? Truth is not always comfortable, but it gives you peace. It doesn't come with a spotlight or applause, but it brings long-term clarity. When you choose based on truth, you're not chasing the high of the moment. You're building a foundation, one that doesn't fall apart when things get difficult. Pressure will always be there. There's pressure to say yes when you want to say no. Pressure to keep up with everyone else. Pressure to avoid conflict. Pressure to take the job, stay in the relationship, sign the deal, play it safe, avoid the hard road. And then there's pressure you put on yourself to prove something, to not disappoint anyone, to not feel behind. But when you're choosing based on pressure, you're not choosing freely. You're reacting. You're surviving. You're saying yes to keep the peace. You're doing what looks right to others, but feels wrong to you. That's a dangerous way to live. And then there are the quick wins. They're everywhere. Buy now, get instant results. Take the shortcut, skip the process. The problem is, those wins don't last.
They're built on shaky ground. They give you a hit of excitement, but the next day you're back where you started, or worse. You see it all the time. People want success, but they don't want to go through the process. They want rewards without discipline. They want progress without consistency. But real results don't come from quick wins. They come from truth. And truth often takes time. It takes patience. It takes choosing what's right over what's fast. You've got to slow down and ask yourself, what is true for me right now? Not what looks good. Not what everyone expects. Not what will get me the fastest applause. But what is true? What do I believe? What do I stand for? What do I really want? Because if you skip that and choose under pressure, you'll wake up with results you don't even care about. You'll reach goals that don't fulfill you. You'll build a life that doesn't match who you are. There's nothing wrong with moving fast when the decision is clear, but there's everything wrong with rushing, because you're afraid to be honest. If the only reason you're choosing something is to avoid disappointment or conflict or fear, then you're not making a smart decision, you're escaping. And every time you escape, the pressure gets louder next time. The cycle repeats. The regrets build up. Truth is quiet, but it's powerful. You know it when you feel it. You can't always explain it, but you feel it in your chest. It feels steady. It feels strong. It doesn't need approval. It doesn't need attention. It just, and you've got to learn to choose from that place. Not from panic, not from stress, not from what looks easy, but from what you know deep down is right. And here's what makes it hard. Truth doesn't always make you popular. Sometimes it means walking away. Sometimes it means waiting longer. Sometimes it means saying no when everyone else says yes. But the people who live well, the people who sleep peacefully, the people who feel proud of how they got to where they are, those are the ones who chose truth over pressure. They didn't take the quick road. They didn't bend every time life pushed them. They stood strong. And that strength wasn't loud. It was silent. It was in their private choices, in the moments no one saw, when they could have taken the easy way out but they didn't. Every decision has a cost. Pressure costs you peace. Quick wins cost you long-term success. But truth pays off. Maybe not right away. Maybe not in a way others understand. But in the long run, it always pays off. Because when you choose truth, you don't have to fake it. You don't have to carry guilt. You don't have to explain yourself over and over. You're aligned. You're clear. You're proud of what you chose even if it was hard. You've got to be okay with slowing down. You've got to be okay with disappointing people. You've got to be okay with not rushing, just to feel safe for a moment, because pressure will try to convince you that now is your only chance, that if you don't act now, you'll miss everything. But most of that is a lie. Smart decisions are never made in panic. They're made in presence. They're made with clarity. They're made from a calm and grounded state, not one built on fear or desperation. Ask yourself real questions. Am I doing this because I believe in it, or because I'm afraid not to? Am I saying yes because it's true to me, or because I don't want conflict? Am I chasing this because it matters, or because I want to feel good for a minute? These are the questions that pull you out of the pressure and back into purpose. There will be opportunities that look great on the outside, but don't feel right on the inside. Don't ignore that. Just because something is fast, easy, or popular, doesn't mean it belongs in your life. What's true for you might take longer. It might demand more from you, but it will last, and you won't have to keep repairing damage from rushed decisions. People often say they don't know what to do, but deep down, they do. They just don't want to face the pressure that comes with doing what's right. They don't want to risk being misunderstood. They don't want to lose the quick reward. But the longer you avoid truth, the more complicated your life becomes. The more you choose under pressure, the more out of control you feel. You start to lose yourself in decisions that don't reflect who you are. And one day, you look around and don't recognize your own life, not because you didn't work hard, but because you didn't choose truth when it mattered. So make a commitment to yourself. From now on, before every decision, stop and ask, is this choice true to me? If it is, stand by it even if it's not easy. If it's not, wait. Think, recenter. The world might not wait for you, but your peace is worth protecting. Your future is worth building the right way. When you choose based on truth, you choose with strength. You stop letting pressure rush your thinking. You stop falling for shortcuts that leave you empty. You stand in your values. You move with clarity. You feel grounded even when life gets loud. And that's not just how smart decisions are made. It's how strong lives are built, one true choice at a time.
Chapter 5. Think clearly even when outside voices feel louder. There will always be voices around you telling you what to do, how to live, what's right, what's wrong, what's acceptable, what's expected. It starts early, and it never really stops. Family, friends, co-workers, the media, strangers, people who don't even know you well. Everyone seems to have an opinion about what your next move should be. And if you're not careful, those outside voices become louder than your own thinking. They crowd your judgment. They shape your choices. They start deciding for you. That's how people lose themselves, not in one big moment, but in small decisions made to satisfy everyone else except themselves. You've got to build a strong mind, one that doesn't crumble just because everyone is shouting something different, one that can stand steady when there's pressure to follow the crowd, one that doesn't change direction every time someone disagrees. Thinking clearly means being able to separate what's helpful from what's noise. It means being able to hear your own thoughts, even when the outside world is busy trying to influence them. This is not easy, especially when the people giving advice are close to you, people who care about you, people who want the best for you. But even those people don't always know what's right for you. Their perspective is shaped by their own fears, their own life, their own regrets, and sometimes, without realizing it, they try to protect you by holding you back. They give you advice that sounds safe. They push you toward the options that look good on paper, but don't feel right in your gut. And if you don't know how to think clearly in those moments, you'll follow their voice instead of your own. Clarity isn't loud, it's calm. It doesn't rush, it doesn't force, it waits for you to stop reacting and start reflecting. That's where clear thinking begins. When you stop trying to please everyone and start asking yourself what makes sense to you. When you stop needing permission and start trusting your own judgment. When you stop letting noise fill your mind and start protecting your mental space. There's a big difference between listening and obeying. You can listen to people, you can take their feedback, you can consider their perspective, but clear thinking means you don't automatically absorb their view as truth. You take what fits and leave the rest. You think for yourself. You don't hand over the steering wheel of your life just because someone speaks with confidence. Loud voices don't always mean wise voices. One of the most important things you can develop is the ability to pause in conversation, in conflict, in decision-making. When the outside voices feel loud, pause. Ask yourself, what do I really think about this? Not what you're supposed to think, not what you've been told to think, but what actually makes sense to you based on your values, your vision, your experience. That pause gives you power. It gives you space to return to your own mind before someone else fills it. You've got to be willing to disappoint people, not out of disrespect, but out of self-respect. You're not here to live someone else's story. You're not here to follow every trend, copy every plan, or match every expectation. You're here to make your own choices with clarity, with strength,
and with full ownership of what comes next. That means your thinking has to be your own, not borrowed, not forced, not manufactured by pressure. Sometimes the outside voices won't even be people. Sometimes they're systems, rules, cultural beliefs, success models, trends, status, titles, images you see every day that tell you what you should want. That's noise too. It's not evil, but if you let it run your decisions, you'll end up chasing things that never really mattered to you. You'll be busy, but not fulfilled, impressive to others, but unrecognizable to yourself. Clear thinking doesn't require you to shut out the world. It requires you to filter it, to stay awake, to stay honest, to ask deeper questions. Does this align with who I am? Will this choice serve me in the long run? If no one else had an opinion about this, what would I choose? That kind of thinking keeps you centered. It keeps you from getting lost in other people's stories. You've also got to be careful about urgency. People will try to rush you. Decide now. Don't miss the chance. You're falling behind. But urgency is often just disguised pressure. And when you're rushed, your clarity weakens. You start moving fast just to avoid missing out. But speed doesn't always lead to truth. Sometimes it leads to regret. Clear thinking means you don't let outside timelines shake your inner process. You take the time you need to get it right, not to be perfect, but to be honest. Another thing to watch out for is approval addiction. It's subtle. You might not think you care what people think, but if their opinion changes your direction, it's running you. You post something, and a comment makes you doubt it. You share an idea, and someone laughs, so you pull back. You're excited about a goal, and someone questions it, and suddenly you're unsure. That's the outside voice creeping in, and it's only powerful when your own voice isn't clear enough to fight back. To think clearly, you've got to build a relationship with yourself, one where you can sit in silence without needing validation, one where you can face your own thoughts without distraction, one where you can hear the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. That level of honesty isn't common, but it's what separates people who lead their life from people who follow the noise. You need stillness, even if just for a few minutes each day, a space where no one is talking at you, a space where you're not scrolling, reacting, or absorbing, just thinking, asking, checking in. That's where clarity grows, in quiet, not chaos, in reflection, not reaction, in intention, not impulse. Clear thinking doesn't mean you always get it right. It means you know why you chose what you chose. It means you own it. You learn from it. You grow from it. It means you don't blame others when things go wrong, because you were thinking for yourself from the beginning. There will be times when your choice goes against the crowd, and that's when your clarity is tested the most. Will you bend just to blend in, or will you stay firm because your thinking is solid? That moment defines who you are, and the more you practice clear thinking, the stronger you get at staying calm in the noise. You've got to remember your life is yours. No one else is responsible for how it turns out. So why give away the power to choose? Why let someone else's voice override your own? That's not confidence. That's fear. That's trying to avoid blame. But real strength is found in taking ownership, even when it's uncomfortable. Thinking clearly is not about being smarter than others. It's about being honest with yourself. It's about being patient enough to wait for your own answer. It's about being courageous enough to follow it, not because it's easy, but because it's right. So when the voices get loud, when people start pushing, when the world starts rushing, when the pressure builds, don't let that be the moment you lose yourself. Let that be the moment you return to yourself. Slow down. Ask the hard questions. Listen to what you believe, not just what you hear. Respect your own mind enough to use it fully. That's how you build a strong life, not by following every voice around you, but by thinking clearly when it matters most, even when the outside voices feel louder, especially when they feel louder, because that's when your mind needs to be strongest. That's when your clarity becomes your edge. That's when you prove to yourself that no matter what's going on around you, you still know how to think for you, and that more than anything is how smart, lasting decisions are made. Chapter 6. Pay attention when something feels slightly off inside. Sometimes your body knows before your mind catches up. You're about to say yes to something, or maybe you're about to start something new or step into a conversation, and suddenly something doesn't sit right. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. It's subtle, a little tightening in your chest, a slight hesitation in your voice, a quick shift in your breathing. Maybe your hands get cold, your mouth feels dry, or a small voice inside whispers, "Wait, that's not random, that's not weakness, that's intelligence." That's your inner signal telling you something isn't quite right, and if you're wise, you won't brush it off. But most people do. They're trained to ignore those signals. They were told not to be too sensitive. They were taught to think logically, to follow the facts, to stop overthinking. So when that inner discomfort shows up, they distract themselves. They keep moving. They say, "It's nothing," or "I'll deal with it later." But they feel it. And later, they often look back and say, "I knew something was wrong. I just didn't listen." That's a painful kind of regret. Not because they didn't know, but because they did and chose to ignore it. That feeling, the one that says something's off, is your inner warning system. It's trying to keep you aligned. It's trying to keep you safe. Not safe from discomfort, but safe from drifting away from your values, your peace, your clarity. The problem is, the world teaches you to stay busy, to keep going, to check the boxes. And in that rush, it's easy to miss those quiet signals inside. Smart decision-making starts by paying attention to those small shifts in how you feel. Not in a reactive way, but in an honest way. When something inside you tenses, when something feels off, don't rush past it. Don't force yourself to pretend everything is fine. Stop, get curious. Ask, what exactly is making me feel this way? Am I doing this because I want to or because I feel pressured? Is there something here I don't fully trust? That internal tension might be pointing to something important. Maybe it's not the situation itself, but the timing. Maybe the people involved don't feel right. Maybe it's not about fear, but about wisdom telling you, this isn't for you. You don't always need a perfect reason. Sometimes the reason comes later. But your job is to pay attention now. Ignoring these signals over time creates patterns of self-betrayal. You say yes when you mean no. You go along with something just to keep the peace. You act like everything's okay, while something inside you keeps shrinking. And eventually you lose the ability to hear yourself. You stop trusting your own instincts. That's not how you were meant to live. You were meant to feel, to notice, to respond with awareness. Not just from logic, not just from habit, but from full-body awareness. The smartest people I've ever met are not just good thinkers, they're good listeners. They listen to their gut. They notice what shifts in them. When a decision comes up, they track the patterns. They don't rush. They don't dismiss. They sit with the discomfort long enough to understand what it's trying to say. That's maturity. That's self-respect. Some of the biggest mistakes in life don't come from lack of information. They come from ignoring that early signal. That small discomfort, that moment when you felt off, even if everything on paper looked fine. That's why it's not enough to follow logic alone. You need to feel your way through decisions too. Not emotionally reactive, but emotionally aware. And here's the truth. Your feelings don't lie, but they do speak in quiet tones. If your only way of moving through life is full speed ahead, you'll miss them. You'll overlook the warning sign. You'll think everything's okay until it's clearly not. And by then, you've committed to something that doesn't fit. You're tangled in something that doesn't align. And getting out costs you more than if you had listened early on. So slow down, get honest, tune in. When something feels slightly off, before it turns into a crisis, pause, even if you can't explain it to anyone else. Even if no one else sees the problem. If you feel it, honor it. You don't need a crowd to agree with your instinct. You just need the courage to respect it. The mind will often try to talk you out of what your body already knows. It will say things like, "You're just nervous," or "This is your only chance," or "You're being difficult." But here's the thing. Being nervous is different from feeling unsettled. Nerves pass, unsettling energy stays. And the more you train yourself to notice that difference, the more powerful your decisions become. It's not weakness to step back, it's strength. It means you're taking your own signals seriously. It means you're not willing to make choices that go against your peace. It means you trust your awareness more than someone else's expectations. That's not avoidance, that's alignment. You don't need to explain your hesitation to everyone. Some people won't understand. They'll tell you to get over it, to push through, to stop overanalyzing. That's okay. They don't need to get it. But you do, because you're the one who will have to live with the result of your choices. You're the one who will carry the weight if something goes wrong, so you owe it to yourself to listen before you leave. And if you don't know what the discomfort means right away, that's fine. You don't need instant clarity. You just need awareness. Pay attention to the pattern. Keep a journal. Write it down. Notice when those feelings show up. Is it around certain people, in certain situations, at specific time? The more you track it, the more you'll start to understand what your inner signals are trying to tell you. Over time, you'll build a deeper connection with yourself. You'll begin to trust that quiet voice. You'll get better at saying no before something becomes a problem. You'll stop second-guessing your instincts. And that builds confidence, not the fake kind that comes from being loud, but the real kind that comes from being grounded. You won't need to over-explain. You won't feel confused all the time. You won't need endless reassurance, because you'll know when something feels right, and more importantly, you'll know when it doesn't. That's not magic. That's discipline. That's practice. That's awareness. Smart decision-making is not just about facts and logic. It's about feeling when something is off, before it breaks. It's about caring enough about your future to stop and listen now. Not waiting until the damage is done. Not pretending until it's too late. But acting while the signal is still small. That's how you stay ahead. That's how you protect your peace. That's how you live a life you don't have to escape from. So next time you feel that small signal that something is just slightly off, don't brush it aside. Don't convince yourself you're overthinking. Don't rush into ignoring it just to keep things moving. That's your early wisdom speaking. That's your clarity trying to reach you. Listen to it. Honor it. Let it guide you before you need to recover from another choice you didn't really want to make. Because the best decisions don't just come from what looks good. They come from what feels steady, what feels clean, and what feels true deep inside. And that kind of truth always starts with awareness. Even when it's just a quiet, uneasy feeling telling you something doesn't fit. Pay attention. Your future will thank you. Chapter 7. Think about how this will affect your future. Every decision you make, no matter how small it seems, sends a message to your future. It either builds something you'll be proud of, or creates something you'll wish you could undo. Most people live for the moment. They think about how something feels right now, how it will fix a problem fast, how it can make the discomfort go away today. But very few stop and ask, what does this choice lead to? That's the real test of wisdom. Not how fast you can act, but how far ahead you can think. Your future is shaped by what you do today. Not by what you hope for, not by what you imagine, not by what you say you want, but by the choices you make with your time, your energy, your habits, your relationships, and your discipline. Thinking about how a decision will affect your future forces you to get honest. It pushes you to stop making choices based on emotions or pressure, and to start making choices based on impact. It's the difference between relief and results, between short-term comfort and long-term strength. When you only think about now, it's easy to justify anything. Spend the money, skip the workout, avoid the conversation, stay in the wrong place, say yes just to avoid the tension. It feels easier, but the cost comes later. You wake up a month from now, or a year from now, and wonder why you feel stuck, overwhelmed or behind. That's not bad luck. That's the result of choices made without thinking ahead. If you want to get ahead in life, you have to make decisions with your future in mind, not just your present feelings. That means before you say yes, you pause and ask, what will this create in my life later? Before you quit something, you ask, what will this cost me next month? Before you stay stuck in a pattern, you ask, where is this really taking me? Most people don't want to ask those questions. They don't want the pressure. They don't want to admit that their actions today are shaping what happens next. But the people who grow, the ones who change their lives for real, are the ones who face those questions head on. Think about someone who's disciplined, who wakes up on time, who takes care of their health, who protects their focus, who doesn't waste time arguing about things that don't matter. That person doesn't just magically live well. They've trained their mind to think ahead. They don't eat based on cravings. They don't spend based on emotions. They don't react based on ego. They pause. They think about what this moment creates later. They think about the version of themselves that will exist a month or a year from now, and they choose in a way that protects that version. When you don't think about your future, you gamble with your peace. You start living on impulse. You give in to habits that break your progress. You say yes to things that slowly eat away at your time, your energy, your goals, and then you wonder why your life doesn't change. It's because nothing new can grow when you keep planting the same decisions every day. Your future self is not a stranger. It's you. It's the person who will have to deal with the results of what you're doing right now. That's not some distant reality. That's who you'll be tomorrow, next week, next year. And if you care about that person, you'll start making choices that support them. You'll start saying no to what looks good but doesn't grow you. You'll start choosing what might feel harder now, but gives you freedom later. You've got to start asking better questions. If I say yes to this, what will I have to say no to later? If I avoid this now, what problem will I still be facing later? If I keep doing what I'm doing today, where does that take me? These are not dramatic questions. These are practical tools, because every path leads somewhere. The small habits, the little excuses, the things you tolerate, all of them build something. And if you're not thinking about where those things are taking you, you'll end up building a life you didn't mean to create. It's easy to believe that one small decision doesn't matter, but that's how people fall behind. One skipped task, one delayed action, one ignored truth at a time. Not because they don't care, but because they didn't think about how that moment would ripple out into the rest of their life. That's how time slips away. That's how opportunities pass by. Not with a big mistake, but with 1,000 small decisions that seemed harmless in the moment. If you want change, it doesn't come from hoping. It comes from thinking ahead, from stopping yourself long enough to ask, what does this lead to? Not, what do I feel like doing right now? That's the question that keeps people stuck. Feelings are temporary. Regret is not. You won't always feel motivated. You won't always feel certain. But you can always stop and think. That's what separates smart living from scattered living. Thinking beyond the next 10 minutes. You've got to remind yourself that every decision is a seed. You don't see the result right away, but it's growing. Every time you follow through when it's hard, every time you show up when you don't feel like it, every time you choose discipline over distraction, you're investing in your future peace. That's a kind of strength you don't get from shortcuts. You get it from thinking clearly and acting with purpose. Ask yourself this: if someone followed me around for 1 week and tracked every decision I made, what kind of future would they say I'm creating? Would they say you're heading somewhere meaningful? Would they say you're stuck in patterns that aren't helping you? Would they say you're avoiding your potential because it's easier to stay comfortable? You've got to get honest about the gap between what you want and what you're doing. Because if what you're doing today doesn't match where you say you want to go, your life won't change. It doesn't matter how inspired you feel. It doesn't matter how good your plan looks on paper. If your daily decisions aren't aligned with your future goals, you're just hoping, and hope without action doesn't create progress. When you start thinking ahead, everything shifts. You stop needing instant results. You stop getting frustrated when things take time, because you know you're planting something that matters. You know you're building a structure that won't collapse under pressure. That kind of thinking builds patience. It builds focus. It builds the kind of quiet confidence that doesn't need attention because it's built on results. You can't control everything that happens in the future, but you can control the quality of the decisions you make today. And the more you respect your future, the better your choices become. You don't settle just to make people happy. You don't spend time on things that drain you. You don't quit just because it's inconvenient. You move with purpose. You think with clarity. You act with responsibility. Your future is not waiting to be discovered. It's waiting to be built. Every action you take today adds up. You might not see the change immediately, but it's happening, quietly, consistently, decision by decision, day by day, and one day, it becomes your reality. Not because you got lucky, but because you started living like your future mattered to you. You owe it to yourself to stop making decisions that only serve your present mood. You're more than your feelings. You're more than this moment. You're the sum of everything you choose when no one's watching. And if you start choosing with your future in mind, you'll wake up one day in a life that makes sense to you. Not because it was easy, but because you earned it by thinking, planning, and acting with intention. That's the mindset that leads to a life you're proud of. One day at a time, one future-focused decision at a time. Chapter 8. Make hard calls when easy ones break your values. There comes a point when the easy choice is no longer an option, not because it's unavailable, but because it doesn't match the kind of person you want to be. That's where real growth begins. When doing what's simple, fast, or comfortable starts to feel wrong because it doesn't align with your values. That's when you're faced with the kind of decision that defines who you are. Not in front of a crowd, not for applause, but in quiet, honest moments where you have to choose between what's easy and what's right. Most people know what their values are. They know what matters to them. They've said it out loud. They've written it down. They've made promises to themselves about how they'll live and who they want to be. But the test of values isn't when life is calm. The test is when those values are challenged. When standing by them means saying no to what everyone else is saying yes to. When protecting them means walking away from comfort. When living by them demands that you speak up, hold your ground, or take a loss that could have been avoided if you had just looked the other way. The truth is, hard decisions are a part of life. You can't avoid them. And if you keep avoiding them just to make things easier, you'll keep losing little pieces of your self-respect. Every time you choose convenience over character, something inside you feels it. It might not break you in that moment, but it builds a pattern of small self-betrayal. And if you don't stop it, you end up living a life that looks fine on the outside, but doesn't feel right on the inside. Making the hard call means choosing the long road, when the shortcut would be faster. It means saying no when saying yes would keep things smooth. It means keeping a promise when breaking it would save time. And it means walking away from things that look good, feel good, and work well, but don't sit right with your spirit. That's not weakness, that's strength. That's power. That's what gives your life structure and meaning. You don't build confidence by always getting what you want. You build it by doing what's right when it's difficult. You build it by standing up for something when it would be easier to stay quiet. You build it by choosing integrity over approval. Those aren't glamorous moments. Nobody's clapping for you when you say no behind closed doors. Nobody's giving you a medal when you walk away from a deal that doesn't feel clean. But those moments add up. They build your internal strength. They make it easier to trust yourself, because you know you won't fold just to keep things simple. Values are not just words, they're actions. If you say honesty matters to you but you lie to avoid discomfort, then that's not your value. If you say loyalty matters but you betray trust when it benefits you, then that's not your value. Your reals are what you choose under pressure. They're the decisions you make when nobody's watching. They're the lines you refuse to cross, even when there's a reward waiting on the other side. That's why you've got to slow down and ask yourself before every big decision, am I choosing this because it's easy, or because it's right? Not what feels good, not what keeps everyone happy, not what lets you skip the hard part, but what's right, what's aligned, what you'll still be proud of 5 years from now when you look back. The easy path often comes with hidden costs. It looks clean at first. It saves time. It avoids awkward conversations. It helps you fit in. But later, you start to notice the weight. You feel the distance between who you are and how you're living. And that gap doesn't go away on its own. It grows every time you compromise just to keep things easy. Until one day, the cost of those decisions becomes too heavy to carry. Making the hard call doesn't mean you're trying to be difficult. It means you care about your future more than your convenience. It means you understand that real peace doesn't come from avoiding discomfort. It comes from knowing you didn't sell yourself out just to make life smoother for a moment. You might lose people when you make hard decisions. Some won't understand. Some will say you're overthinking. Some will tell you to relax, to let it go, to do what's easy like everyone else. That's fine. Let them talk. They don't have to live with your choices. You do. And if your values cost you a few relationships, a few opportunities, or a few temporary wins, that's a cost worth paying, because the alternative is waking up in a life you no longer recognize. Not every hard decision needs to be dramatic. Sometimes it's small. Saying no to gossip when everyone else is talking. Choosing to return something you could have gotten away with keeping. Being honest when lying would get you out of trouble. These moments seem small, but they train your character. They teach your mind that values are not optional. They're the foundation of every smart decision. You'll never regret being true to your value. You might lose something in the short term, but in the long term, you gain something far more valuable. Trust in yourself. And that trust is what gives you confidence, clarity, and strength when life gets messy. You don't need to explain your decisions to everyone. You don't need a speech. You just need to be clear within yourself. You need to know that you chose what was honest, clean, and true. That's enough. Your peace doesn't depend on how others react. It depends on whether or not you lived in alignment. Making hard calls requires courage, but it also builds courage. It reminds you that you don't need to compromise just to feel safe. It shows you that you can do what's uncomfortable and still be okay. That you can take the difficult route and still move forward. That you can stay true to yourself even when it costs you something. And once you start living that way, you stop fearing hard choices. You stop running from discomfort. You stop depending on other people to approve your decisions. Because you know who you are. You know what matters, and you've proven to yourself over and over that you'll choose your values even when it's not convenient. That's the kind of life that leads to real confidence. Not because you've never failed, not because you always have the answer, but because you know you're not willing to break your own rules just to make things easier. So next time you're faced with a choice that feels easy but doesn't feel right, pause. Ask yourself what you're really about. Ask yourself what you'll be proud of later. Ask yourself if this choice honors the person you're trying to become. And if the answer is no, then walk away. Even if it's hard, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it leaves you with less for now, because what you gain is far more valuable. Integrity, clarity, and a life that fits who you truly are. And those are things no easy choice can ever give you. Chapter 9. Act only when your reason feels clear and solid. One of the most important things you can learn in life is to stop rushing into action just to feel like you're moving forward. A lot of people confuse movement with progress. They think doing something is always better than doing nothing, but that's not true. Action that comes from confusion, fear, or pressure usually leads to more problems, more stress, and more things you have to undo later. You don't need to act every time you feel something. You don't need to respond to every situation the moment it shows up. You need to wait until your reason is clear and solid. That's how strong decisions are made. Not by reacting quickly, but by acting from a place of clarity. And clarity doesn't come from outside noise. It comes from stillness, from checking in with your own thinking, from knowing exactly why you're about to take a step. People lose peace, time, and energy because they make choices with shaky reasons. They say yes just because someone else wants them to. They quit something just because it got uncomfortable. They speak up just because they're angry. They stay quiet just because they're scared. And afterward, they're left with the mess that comes from acting without a grounded purpose. If you want to stop creating unnecessary problems in your life, you've got to stop acting from a place of pressure. You've got to get honest about why you're doing what you're doing. Ask yourself, do I understand my reason? Does this reason make sense to me even when I remove the emotion? Would I still make this choice tomorrow after a good night's sleep? These questions aren't about stalling. They're about protecting your time and energy from decisions that don't serve you. You don't build strength by always being busy. You build it by learning when to pause, when to hold back, when to wait until what you believe and what you're doing are in alignment. That's what builds a steady life, one that doesn't fall apart every time something changes, one that holds its shape because it was built on reasons, not reaction. Sometimes you'll feel a rush to act because silence feels uncomfortable. You're waiting on something, you're unsure, you're in between steps, and that discomfort tells you to move, just so you can escape the tension. But if you give in to that urge too often, you'll start making decisions just to end the silence. Not because they're right, just because they're easier than sitting with the unknown. Real growth starts when you learn how to sit in that space, when you stop needing to act right away, when you can wait for your thinking to catch up to your feelings. That's not being passive. That's being intentional. That's building the kind of self-control that separates people who stay stuck from people who break through. You're not here to react to everything. You're here to respond with wisdom. And wisdom doesn't come from rushing. It comes from understanding, from stepping back, from saying not yet, until your reason is so clear that you don't need to second guess it. That kind of clarity removes doubt. It makes your steps firm. It makes your choices consistent. You stop chasing quick fixes and start making moves that actually lead somewhere. Every time you act from confusion, you create more of it. You add to the noise. You complicate your life. But when you act from clarity, your life becomes simpler, cleaner. You stop doing things that don't match your values. You stop starting things you don't want to finish. You stop saying yes to things that drain you just because you didn't take time to think through your reason. There's always going to be pressure to move fast. People will want to answer. Situations will demand responses. Your own thoughts will push you, but you have the power to pause, to breathe, to say, I'm not ready to act until I know why I'm doing it. That's not weakness. That's leadership. That's self-respect. That's you telling life, I won't be moved by pressure. I'll be moved by purpose. A lot of people act to please others. They make decisions that look good on the outside but don't feel right on the inside. They want to be accepted. They want to avoid conflict. They want to keep up appearances, but they end up exhausted, burnt out, confused, not because they did too much, but because they didn't know why they did it. When you're clear on your reason, you don't need approval. You don't need to explain yourself over and over. You don't feel guilty for taking your time. You don't feel pulled in 10 directions. You act when it's time. You speak when your words are grounded. You decide when the answer comes from your own clarity, not someone else's agenda. Some people will try to rush you. They'll say, you're overthinking, that you need to just do something, that you're missing opportunity. But here's what they don't see. Every decision you make becomes part of your life. It shapes your path. It sets something in motion. So why would you move carelessly? Why would you treat your time, your focus, your energy, like it doesn't matter? It's okay to wait. It's okay to not have the answer yet. It's okay to say, I'm still thinking. That doesn't make you slow. That makes you wise. Because when you do act, it will be with full responsibility. You'll own your choice. You'll stand by it. You'll move without hesitation. Because the reason behind it is solid. And clarity doesn't always mean having a long explanation. Sometimes it's a feeling, a deep knowing, a calm confidence that says, this is right. That's when you move, not when you're panicking, not when you're being pushed, but when your mind is quiet and your intention is strong. Build the habit of checking your reason before every yes, before every no, before every step forward or backward. Ask, do I believe in this reason? Or am I just trying to avoid something? Am I choosing this because it supports my goals? Or just because it stops the discomfort? Will this action make sense to me even when no one is watching? Over time, this habit turns into a mindset. You stop rushing. You stop needing constant direction from others. You start trusting your own sense of timing. You start making decisions that support your future instead of fixing your feelings in the moment. And that kind of thinking leads to a more powerful life, one where you're not always reacting, but choosing, not always moving, but building. Clarity gives you freedom, freedom from regret, freedom from explaining your actions to people who were never responsible for them, freedom from the weight of doing things just to prove something. You stop living for reaction and start living with purpose. If something doesn't feel right yet, it's okay to wait. If your reason is shaky, don't act until it's strong. Don't move just to look busy. Don't speak just to fill silence. Don't agree just to keep the peace. Protect your mind. Respect your path. Value your energy. Act only when your reason is clear and solid, because that's the kind of decision that holds up. That's the kind of decision that builds a strong future. And that's the kind of decision that brings real peace every time.
Chapter 10. Keep fixing your pattern until thinking becomes sharp. Most people don't have bad lives because they're lazy or incapable. They have bad lives because they keep running the same broken patterns. They don't stop to question the way they think. They don't pause long enough to examine how they react. They repeat the same behaviors, make the same choices, fall into the same habits, and then wonder why nothing changes. If you want a different life, you don't need to wait for a breakthrough. You need to fix the pattern over and over until your mind becomes sharp, focused, and strong enough to guide you without dragging you into the same mess over and over again. Patterns are the invisible scripts that run your life. Most of them were built without your permission. You pick them up from how you were raised,
how you responded to pain, how you adapted to survive. Maybe you avoid conflict because you were taught to keep the peace at all costs. Maybe you overwork because you learned to attach your worth to your results. Maybe you shut down emotionally because vulnerability was never safe for you. These patterns don't make you weak, they make you human, but they only continue to run your life if you refuse to look at them. Fixing your patterns starts with awareness. You can't change what you won't face. You've got to stop blaming luck, people, or timing, and start asking yourself, what am I doing over and over that keeps giving me the same result? If you're always overwhelmed, there's a pattern. If you always feel like you're behind, there's a pattern. If you keep ending up in situations that drain you, there's a pattern. And no matter how much you try to change your life from the outside, new job, new friends, new place, if the internal pattern stays the same, you'll always end up back in the same spot. Fixing the pattern means taking ownership. It means noticing the thoughts you go to automatically, the excuses you make, the habits you repeat, the way you explain things to yourself to avoid facing what's really going on. It's not about beating yourself up. It's about being honest enough to admit that something you're doing is keeping you stuck and caring enough about your future to change it. You don't need to fix everything at once. You just need to start with one area where your thinking isn't helping you. Maybe you always assume the worst. Maybe you avoid decisions. Maybe you chase comfort instead of facing challenges. Whatever it is, start there. Watch it closely. Catch it when it shows up. Interrupt it. Replace it with something stronger. Not once, not twice, but until it becomes natural. You've got to train your mind like you train your body, with practice, with repetition, with discipline. Every time you stop yourself from repeating a pattern that doesn't serve you, you're rewiring something. Every time you choose a better response, you're sharpening your thinking, and the more you do that, the less power the old pattern has over you. What used to trigger you doesn't anymore. What used to drain you starts to feel distant. What used to pull you backward no longer fits the person you're becoming. But it doesn't happen overnight. You'll slip. You'll catch yourself halfway through a mistake. That's okay. The goal isn't perfection. It's progress. The goal is to keep adjusting, keep learning, keep correcting, until the way you think becomes cleaner, faster, and more aligned with who you really are. That's how you grow. Not by pretending you've got it all figured out, but by constantly tuning the way your mind works. There will be moments when the old patterns feel easier. You'll be tired, stressed, emotional. The old thoughts will show up. Doubt, fear, avoidance, and you'll feel the pull to just fall back into the same way of thinking. But that's the moment that defines you. That's when you either take the old road or choose a new one. The more you choose the new road, even when it's uncomfortable, the more natural it becomes. Eventually it won't feel like a fight. It'll feel like strength. You've got to be willing to study yourself, the way you react to stress, the way you talk to yourself when you fail, the way you act when nobody's watching. Those moments reveal your pattern. And if you want to grow, you can't run from those moments. You've got to step into them with honesty. You've got to ask, why did I think that way? Why did I do that again? What do I need to change in the way I think so this doesn't keep happening? Fixing your pattern is not a one-time decision. It's a mindset you live with. Every day, every choice, every moment of discomfort. You don't wait for life to force you to grow. You take control of how your mind works before it becomes a problem. You train yourself to think with clarity, not emotion, with strategy, not panic, with truth, not defense. And this is not about becoming cold or robotic. It's about becoming wise, grounded, focused. The kind of person who doesn't just react to life, but responds with intention. The kind of person who knows their triggers and doesn't let them lead. The kind of person who can look at their own behavior
without shame and say, I can do better than this. You sharpen your thinking by being consistent. You don't wait to feel ready. You start anyway. You catch the thought that says, this is too hard, and replace it with, this is how I grow. You interrupt the excuse that says, this is just who I am, and replace it with, this is what I'm choosing. You stop letting your past set the rules for your future. That's when your thinking becomes a tool, not a trap. And once your thinking gets sharper, life gets clearer. You don't get pulled in every direction. You don't waste time chasing things that don't matter. You don't spiral every time something goes wrong. You stay steady. You stay focused because your mind isn't working against you anymore. It's working for you. Every result in your life is tied to how you think. If you want better results, you've got to start with your pattern, not with changing everything at once, but with changing the way your thoughts are built, thought by thought, habit by habit, decision by decision, until the way you see things is sharper than it's ever been. There's no perfect version of you, but there is a stronger version, and you reach that version by fixing the pattern again and again, until strength becomes your default, until clarity becomes your habit, until focus becomes your normal. That's not a gift. That's a choice, a decision you make every day to not live on autopilot, a decision to challenge yourself, to grow, to think better, and to never stop improving the way your mind leads your life.